Hello dear tea friends from around the world, and welcome to a new tea class with me, Stéphane Herler, the founder of the Tea Masters blog and the tea-masters.com boutique. Today we are going to talk about literature and the first book of In Search of Lost Time, Swann's Way by Marcel Proust, a French writer from the beginning of the 20th century. And he has really written a very famous novel, and I'm really glad I started to read it, thanks to one of my readers who invited me to this quest, to this adventure of reading Proust, his search in 1 year. So we are reading every week 60 pages approximately of this book, and I found it very interesting for what it had to say about tea. That I made an extensive article, but it's in French. It's, I posted it yesterday on my blog, but I thought, since it's so interesting, let's also share this bits of information about tea that I found in this book with you in my weekly class. This is something I like to do. For me, tea is not just about leaves and drinking and taste. It is also it's also all the culture that is that surrounds tea, and that the tea has created, and we will see that tea really is playing a major part in this story, in this book. There are over 20 mentions of tea, actually of the word thé, and there is even one mention of cup of tea in English in the text, which shows that the English fashion really had a huge influence on tea making in France at the turn of the 19th to 20th century. So in this spirit, I'm going to make a similar tea to what they were having. What is interesting is that there is very little information that we have about the leaves that they're drinking. They don't say, they never mention the name, at least so far in the first book. There's no mention of the name of the tea that they're drinking. There's no mention of where it's coming from which shop, or even from which country it comes from. We also don't know what kind of tea they are drinking, but there's at one place actually two clues that give me pretty much confidence that I have identified the tea that they are drinking, because at one point Odette is asking Mr. Swann, how would you like your tea, with cream or with lemon? And to which I think he replies lemon. Cream. But cream and lemon only work well with red teas, with fully oxidized teas, sometimes also called black teas in the West. And therefore, I think they are drinking red tea, and this is why for today I'm also going to make a high-grade Dianrong, so fully oxidized tea from Yunnan. Let's take it out already. And I'm going to brew it in a while. Actually, this one can be brewed for a while, so I'll do it a bit later. And of course, this book actually is most famous for a few pages where Proust mentions the word tea 7 times, and he mentions it together with the madeleine, this little piece of pastry that he will describe in much detail. So so this really is one of the most famous quote. Actually, it's not a quote as such. It's rather long, but I want to read it to you because I find it so. Really, this is for us the most interesting part in this book, where he mentions the effect of tea with madeleine. So I've even found a translation of the book in PDF format, and I'm going to read this for you. It's going to take a few minutes. I hope that I'll try to make it sound interesting, and so bear with me. It's long. It is a bit detailed. But this is Proust. This is his way of writing, with very long sentences that seem never to end. I try to convey the charm. I think the translator did a pretty good job, so I hope that I'll be up to the task. Many years had elapsed, during which nothing of Combray, save what was comprised in the theatre and the drama of my going to bed there, had any existence for me, when one day in winter, as I came home, my mother, seeing that I was cold, offered me some tea, a thing I did not ordinarily take. I declined at first, and then, for no particular reason, changed my mind. She sent out for one of those short, plump little cakes called Petite Madeleine, which look as though they had been moulded in the fluted scallop of a pilgrim's shell. And soon, mechanically, weary after a dull day with the prospect of a depressing morrow, I raised to my lips a spoonful of the tea in which I had soaked a morsel of the cake. No sooner had the warm liquid and the crumbs with it touched my palate than a shudder ran through my whole body, and I stopped, intent upon the extraordinary changes that were taking place. An exquisite pleasure had invaded my senses, but individual, detached, with no suggestion of its origin. And at once the vicissitudes of life had become indifferent to me, its disasters innocuous, its brevity illusory. This new sensation having had on me the effect which love has of filling me with a precious essence, or rather this essence was not in me, it was myself. I had ceased now to feel mediocre, accidental, mortal. Whence could have come to me this all-powerful joy? I was conscious that it was connected with the taste of tea and cake, but that it was infinitely transcended those savours, could not indeed be of the same nature as theirs. Whence did it come? What did it signify? How could I seize upon and define it? I drank a second mouthful, in which I find nothing more than in the first, a third, which gives me rather less than the second. It is time to stop. The potion is losing its magic. It is plain that the object of my quest, the truth, lies not in the cup, but in myself. The tea has called up in me, but does not in itself understand, and can only repeat it indefinitely, with a gradual loss of strength, the same testimony, which I, too, cannot interpret, though I hope at least to be able to call upon the tea for it again, and to find it there presently, intact and at my disposal, for my final enlightenment. I put down my cup and examine my own mind. It is for it to discover the truth. But how? What an abyss of uncertainty whenever the mind feels that some part of it has strayed beyond its own borders, when it, the seeker, is at once the dark region through which it must go seeking, where all its equipment will avail it nothing. Seek? More than that, create. It is face to face with something which does not so far exist, to which alone can give reality and substance, which it alone can bring into the light of day. And I begin again to ask myself what it could have been, this unremembered state, which brought with it no logical proof of existence. but only the sense that it was a happy, that it was a real state in whose presence other states of consciousness melted and vanished. I decide to attempt to make it reappear. I retrace my thoughts to the moment at which I drank the first spoonful of tea. I find again the same state, illumined by no fresh light. I compel my mind to make one further effort, to follow and recapture once again this fleeting sensation, and that nothing may interrupt it in its course. I shut out every obstacle, every extraneous idea. I stop my ears and inhibit all attention to the sounds which come from the next room. And then, feeling that my mind is growing fatigued without having any success to report, I compel it for a change to enjoy that distraction which I have just denied it, to think of other things, to rest and refresh itself before the supreme attempt. And then, for the second time, I clear an empty space in front of it. I place in position before my mind's eyes the still recent taste of that first mouthful, and I feel something start within me, something that leaves its resting place and attempts to rise, something that has been embedded like an anchor at a great depth. I do not know yet what it is, but I can feel it mounting slowly. I can measure the resistance. I can hear the echo of great spaces traversed. Undoubtedly, what is thus palpitating in the depths of my being must be the image, the visual memory which, being linked to that taste, has tried to follow it into my conscious mind. But its struggles are too far off, too much confused. Scarcely can I perceive the colorless reflection in which are blended the uncapturable whirling medley of radiant hues, and I cannot distinguish its form, cannot invite it, as the one possible interpreter, to translate to me the evidence of its contemporary, its inseparable paramour, the taste of cake soaked in tea. Cannot ask it to inform me what special circumstance is in question, of what period in my past life. Will it ultimately reach the clear surface of my consciousness, this memory, this old dead moment, which the magnetism of an identical moment has travelled so far to importune, to disturb, to raise up out of the very depths of my being? I cannot tell. Now that I feel nothing, it has stopped, has perhaps gone down again into darkness, from which who can say whether it will ever rise? 10 times over I must essay the task, must lean down over the abyss, and each time the natural laziness which deters us from every difficult enterprise, every work of importance, has urged me to leave the thing alone, to drink my tea, and to think merely of the worries of today and my hopes of tomorrow, which let themselves be pondered over without effort or distress of mind. And suddenly the memory returns. The taste was that of the little crumb of madeleine which on Sunday mornings at Combray, because on those mornings I did not go out before church time, when I went to say good day to her in her bedroom, my Aunt Leonie used to give me, dipping it first in her own cup of real or lime flower tea. The sight of the little madeleine had recalled nothing to my mind before I tasted it, perhaps because I had so often seen such things in the interval without tasting them on the trays of pastry cooks' windows, that their image has dissociated itself from those Combray days to take its place among other more recent. Perhaps because of those memories, so long abandoned and put out of mind, nothing now survived. Everything was scattered. The forms of things, including that of the little scallop shell of pastry, so richly sensual under its severe religious folds, were either obliterated or had been so long dormant as to have lost the power of expansion which would have allowed them to resume their place in my consciousness. But when, from a long distant past, nothing subsists, after the people are dead, after the things are broken and scattered, still, alone, more fragile, but with more vitality, more unsubstantial, more persistent, more faithful, the smell and taste of things remain poised a long time, like souls, ready to remind us, waiting and hoping for their moment, amid the ruins of all the rest, and bare and faltering in the tiny and almost impalpable drop of the essence, the vast structure of recollection. And once I had recognized the taste of the crumb of madeleine soaked in her decoction of lime flowers, which my aunt used to give me, also I did not yet know and must long postpone the discovery of why this memory made me so happy. Immediately the old grey house upon the street where her room was rose up like the scenery of a theatre to attach itself to the little pavilion opening onto the garden which had been built out behind it for my parents, the isolated panel which until that moment had been all that I could see. And with the house, the town, from morning to night and in all weathers, the square where I was sent before luncheon, the streets along which I used to run errands, the country roads we took when it was fine. And just as the Japanese amuse themselves by filling a porcelain bowl with water and steeping in it little crumbs of paper which until then are without character or form, but the moment they become wet, stretch themselves and bend, take on color and distinctive shape, become flowers or houses or people, permanent or recognizable. So in that moment all the flowers in our garden and in Mr. Swann's park, and the water lilies in the Vivonne, and the good folk of the village and their little dwellings, and the parish church and the whole of Combray and of its surroundings, taking their proper shapes and growing solid, sprang into being, town and gardens alike, from my cup of tea. Okay, this was a long but I hope enjoyable piece of Proust's book, Swann's Way, describing the taste of madeleine and tea. So, since I'm a bit thirsty now, let me make some tea and enjoy a madeleine with it to recreate this moment that Proust described just to us, with the difference that I don't have his memory of eating madeleine with tea, soaked in tea, from my aunt Leonie. Here, actually, if you want to recreate the similar experience, you have to find your own madeleine, your own special experience that reconnects you to your past. Here Proust does many things. First, he describes a wonderful taste of that happens in the palate. Really, it's almost like a surgeon. Step by step, we see him bring his cup to his lips, and then the taste hitting his palate, and all the how it hits him all of a sudden. So this is, I hope, a very familiar experience that we all enjoy one day or another with a very good cup of tea. And I think this experience that he describes will feel very familiar to most of us. So already for this, it's very interesting that to read this description. Then what actually he's trying to do is teaching meditation, trying to think of nothing, and then he explains, oh, thinking of nothing is very difficult, and to block your own mind, to concentrate on the memory that that was connected with the tea and the madeleine. At first, he really struggles to find the connection with his past. What is this memory that that is trying to come to his mind? He cannot, for all his strength, for all his effort, all his concentration, he cannot pinpoint which memory this recalls to his mind. So then he describes what happens when you meditate, and you maybe there's a time when you try to really very hard to be focused, but after a while you realize it does not work like this. Meditation, you need to let go, to let your mind stray away, and then little by little he's making it starts to work. He feels it's coming, and slowly by slowly there are ups and downs. Sometimes he feels it's coming closer, it's nearer, and sometimes it's gone again. Then he tries to drink again to bring the memory up, but with the problem that the more you drink from the same cup, the first sense of joy gradually fades away, because this is a law of diminishing returns. You are most happy with the first bite, and the more you are, or the first gulp, but then as the novelty fades away, you are less each new sip brings less joy. Okay, this should be about it. So it's very, yeah, really like, and also the fact that he's at one point he's talking about a sudden illumination. This is also something that is very much discussed among Buddhist monks who do meditation. Are you going to experience a sudden illumination, or is it going to be something more gradual, and with practice you are getting closer and closer to illumination and to a higher state of mind? Now, he seems to be more on the side of a sudden illumination, with this tea and crumbs hitting him at once, but at the same time he still says you have to learn to let it rise, this memory, you let it go. So it's a bit a mix of both approaches, I would say, and so for me this is also a connection to a meditative state of mind, which is also something that we've been talking about, is that you have to be very calm and very focused when you are drinking tea, because tea is something that is so delicate in fragrance. So it's it really helps to be calm and focused, almost like a meditation. In Japanese, they say that drinking tea is almost like meditating. And when you have really a very good experience, it may very often it's because the fragrances of the tea connect you with your past. And of course this is really very nice when the tea is so powerful that it can help you to regain some memory from your childhood and bring you back in a childhood state. Hopla. And for him, the madeleine and the tea did it. Yep. So, let's try to reenact how he would have done it. So, piece of madeleine soaked in tea. Ville-Combray and its town and its flowers and its people come to my mind. But definitely it matches. And now I will associate this taste with this writing, with these 3 pages of Proust's literary work. And for me, now this taste will be the taste of the madeleine infused with red tea. And I guess now, when next time I will drink my tea, I will think of Proust and his experience of connecting to his past, happy childhood. Even though many times were not so happy, but this particular time, when on Sunday morning he would get his piece of pastry soaked in tea, this was a happy one. So this is a very intimate way of using tea, and very powerful way of that tea is playing a very large part in this story. I found it very interesting. In the other parts of the book, when tea is mentioned, it is mentioned very often as much more as a social experience, as oh, you have a rendezvous to take tea with someone. Odette, the girlfriend of Mr. Swann, is inviting him to take tea for her. There is nothing more chic, nothing more elegant than having tea in a comfortable home and reading a book. And having books with tea. This for her is a pinnacle of elegance. Also she wants to go to the Rue Royale to have her tea. So tea is associated with the monarchy, and it's also a very English thing. As I mentioned, there's one mention in English, a cup of tea, and then tea with toast and muffins. So here it's the British traditions of tea, which was something still at that time very much reserved for the upper classes and for the nobles. Definitely in England at that time, it's the nobles that were the upper classes. So tea really had was a social marker. It was a social thing. It's the people from the upper class. It almost brought you a kind of noblesse if you were having tea. And there's at one point they are mocking. Proust is mocking coffee, that it is tasteless and just like hot water. So really, tea is something so noble, so precious and elegant that he has trouble even conceiving that somebody who's drinking tea could do bad things, could cheat on him. So for him, no, it's just not possible. Somebody who drinks tea is somebody pure, is somebody nice. Cannot be a lady is a lady. He cannot be somebody who will cheat on him with other guys or maybe even other girls. This is completely impossible. So really, it's very interesting to see these. Also this side of tea in the early 20th century, that it was really one of the most elegant possible activity one could have, and have friends for in the afternoon for a tea party is what you would do, and when you had time and money on your hand. So I hope you have enjoyed, and that maybe you will have the pleasure of reading this book. It's in the very beginning, in the first 60 pages, actually in the first 50 even, that this piece with Madeleine and the tea happens. So if you are interested mostly in this is, I think, is already one of the high points for the tea experience in Proust's book. So if you just want to read this again, go and grab a copy, or listen to my rendition of it again. Anyway, thank you very much for having joined me for this new class about tea today. Very elegant, a little bit British, or a little bit French. Thank you very much, and have a nice weekend. C'est délicieux. Merci beaucoup.